Bungie is very close to shutting down Destiny 2. A new population website has just released that gives the info of all Destiny expansions and the population of said expansions from the launch of the game until now. And you might be thinking to yourself, oh, yeah, well, there's lots of highs and lots of lows, but notice how the highs keep coming back every time and time again. So what is it this time, Lucky? What is so new, and why is Destiny 2 actually dying this time? Well, this actually isn't coming from me, but from Justin Truman himself, who is the most powerful person at Bungie, the current studio head, replacing Pete Parsons as the former CEO. He said these exact words in this GDC conference. Listen very closely.
And this moment, when we were literally 5 weeks away from shuttering Destiny 2 as a product, it was like exciting, it was intense, it was terrifying, and I'm going to talk about it some today.
So there it is. This moment where we were 5 weeks away from shutting down Destiny 2. Now, what is that moment on the popularity report here? Well, that we're talking about Curse of Osiris, obviously. And you can see here that right here during the low point of Curse of Osiris was the point where they were at 5 weeks from shutting down Destiny 2. So how bad was the population when they were at 5 weeks from shutting down Destiny 2? Well, it shows here on April 10th, 2018, that the population was at its all-time lowest at 355,000 players, and that's all platforms at the time, which is a massive drop-off from its launch at nearly 3.8 million players, right? To go from having 3.8 million players to 355,000 players is indicative of a really big problem. And it was literally at one of these low points that Bungie was like, yep, it's 5 weeks and then we're done. So what did they do? They decided to cook and actually make some good content. We got Warmind, which helped boost the population for a period of time. It carried the Destiny 2 players over until they could launch Forsaken, which really helped get the momentum moving. So why does that matter in today's context, you may be asking? Well, if the population was so low at 355,000 that they were considering shutting the game down in just 5 weeks, let's look at the population over the last month here. When we scroll all the way over to Edge of Fate, you can see here that the population is less than 300,000 at its lowest point. So we're talking significantly less than even Curse of Osiris numbers. And if you took the average from this last 2 months or so, we've got 323,000, 329,000, 317,000. We are objectively doing worse than the worst time in Destiny 2's history, Curse of Osiris. Bungie said they were 5 weeks away from shutting the game down, and we are doing worse now than we were then. If that doesn't ring the bells, if that doesn't set off all the alarms, I don't know what else will. And still, Bungie continues to pump out TWID after TWID, week after week, with no state of the game, not addressing this in any capacity, which at this point, honestly, their silence has become very problematic. And let me be clear, I don't want Destiny 2 to die. I'm not advocating for the death of Destiny 2. I want massive numbers. I want the game to be like it was at launch, at Forsaken, at Shadowkeep even. But you can see the peaks each year getting significantly lower year after year after year until it kind of leveled out here. You can see Beyond Light launched at around 1.8 million players. The Witch Queen around 1.8 million players. Lightfall, 1.8 million players, and Final Shape at 1.7 million, right? So we had a very consistent, cool 4 years. We could kind of see that, hey, it has a big launch. Things fall off, obviously. They give us an update. It comes right back up. Things fall off, an update, etc., right? It has this consistent pattern to it. And obviously the seasonal model helped for quite some time, right? Until it started becoming a little too cookie cutter, copy paste every single time. And now, presumably, Bungie has just completely ran out of ideas. Everyone left after the Final Shape, and we're left with the Edge of Fate, which launched, by the way, at around 800,000 players. So we were missing 1 million players on launch. Just think about that. The launch of a new saga. Destiny 2 started with the Light and Darkness. It was a continuation from Destiny 1's narrative, of course. And it had 3,800,000 players playing at the very start. And now fast forward from 2017 all the way till 2025, and the launch of the new Fate Saga has 3 million less players. We knew that we were in a bad spot before this graph came to us, but now looking at the data, this is worse than it has ever been in the history of Destiny 2. Like previously, we were looking at these Steam charts, right? And you could see all the peaks and valleys, but obviously Steam didn't get brought into the game until 2019, so we couldn't actually see the data before this. We didn't know how bad the Curse of Osiris was, and I talked about this many times because we kind of chose to give Bungie and Destiny 2 the benefit of the doubt that, hey, it must not have been that bad, right? But now that we actually see the numbers, it tells a very alarming story. It tells a story of immense success on launches with a massive fall off afterwards. And I'm not a financial analyst by any means, but I could safely bet that Bungie is making the majority of their money right here at the highest peak, 2.5 million players for Shadowkeep, than they are throughout the rest of the year, right? That hype, that momentum, selling everyone on the launch of the game, the annual pass, the season passes that go with it, all the cosmetics. This is going to be where you make the most money. And so presumably you need these peaks in order to fund these valleys every single year from Shadowkeep, Beyond Light, Witch Queen, Lightfall, and now Edge of Fate doesn't have the peak anymore. We're starting off Edge of Fate in a valley. Like when you look at the population of where Edge of Fate just launched, right? It's right here. And you scroll back in time, by comparison, some of the lowest numbers during the entire calendar year of Beyond Light. Like when Beyond Light was at its worst population, that was the equivalent of Edge of Fate's best population of launch. And now we're sitting at here around 300,000 players and sometimes even dipping less. 293,000 players across all platforms is insane. Now that's including Steam, that's including Xbox, PlayStation, and then of course the Epic Game Store. Obviously, Google Stadia shut down a while ago. RIP to Google Stadia. I actually thought that was kind of a funny gaming platform. But those are the only four that actually exist right now. So across all four of those platforms, we're not even pulling in 300,000 players. Now, thankfully, there is crossplay. So when you log into the game, you will be able to match players of different platforms. This definitely helps with our extremely low population numbers that we have right now. And that did not exist during those worst months of Curse of Osiris when we were at 300-something thousand. So truly, at this point, cross-save is basically keeping this game on life support. Now, this article just dropped on this exact topic, breaking down all of the information, so let's see what we're going to dig into here. Destiny 2 player count has now fallen below Curse of Osiris lows, the point where Bungie once said it was weeks away from shutting the game down entirely. Destiny 2's total player numbers have dropped below the point where Bungie once said the game was just weeks away from being shut down. And as we just saw in that clip, it was 5 weeks away at 355,000 players, and we are at like 290-something thousand players. So I'm not saying that means that Destiny 2 is only 4 weeks away from shutting down or 3 weeks away from shutting down, because obviously Renegades is going to drop. But what it does mean is that Renegades will have to deliver an absolutely massive amount of income for Bungie to be able to survive. And obviously Bungie has, they've kind of been adopted into just being PlayStation Studios at this point. The name itself, Bungie, is almost defunct at this point. So obviously they have the funding of Sony, which has, many billions of dollars to continue to fund Destiny 2. If they have an interest in doing that, which is a really interesting point, right? Imagine we finally hit a crossroads where Sony says, hey, this Destiny 2 thing isn't really working out. You're bleeding too much money. It costs way too much to keep this game going in terms of keeping the servers up, keeping all of these devs hired, and the ROI on this game is probably pretty terrible right now. If and when we ever cross that bridge and Sony says, yeah, this game is not worth owning anymore, that is going to be such a dark time for Destiny 2 players. Hopefully, fingers crossed, Sony does see something incredible in this game and give it the funding and love that this franchise needs, hiring more devs that are energized, excited, and ambitious for the future of this franchise. Because right now it feels like the devs that are currently running Destiny 2 are they're running it into the ground. I mean, there's no way of looking around it. Like, there's no way of being nice and saying like, oh no, they're trying their best and they're doing an okay job or something like that. I mean, they are probably trying their best, to be fair, but the job that they're doing is just not sufficient. The next part reads, it's not an exaggeration to say Destiny 2 is in one of its roughest spots ever. It's something you can see in nearly every community post, YouTube comment, or even the game's Steam page, which currently sits at mostly negative for recent reviews. I don't even dare look at this anymore. My gosh, last time it said 3%. It is, yep. It's at 3%. Okay, this is about to be the first ever game on Steam to have 0% positive reviews in the last 30 days. This is dark times, I say. On Steam, the game recently hit its lowest player average count ever, around 17,400 players, a record low since the game moved to the platform in 2019. For weeks, frustrated players have been pointing to Steam's dwindling player count as a warning sign, but there's always been debate about how well those numbers reflect the game's total health across all platforms. Yes, and this is actually a valid point where we can't see the numbers from Epic, the Epic launcher, right? And we can't see the numbers from Xbox or PlayStation. And presumably there's a lot of console players, especially because this game was originally a console game that only existed on PlayStation and Xbox for the first, 3+ years. Only later was it transitioned onto PC. So presumably a lot of console players, or maybe even more console players than Steam players, which is true now that we know. Now that we can see this popularity report, we can see that its lowest cumulative population was at 293,000. And we know that this was October 2nd, 2025. And when we go onto the Steam charts and look at October 2nd, it was 15,000 players on Steam. This was on a Thursday. We actually did a video talking about this, the lowest recorded peak in Destiny 2's history. So that's 15,000 minus from 293,000, which puts us at what, 278,000 players on PlayStation, Xbox, and the Epic launcher, which is still a lot. I mean, by comparison, you can see that there must be at least over 100,000 players on Xbox and maybe 100,000 players on PlayStation, while simultaneously there's only 15,000 on Steam, right? So when there's only 15 to 20K on Steam, there's over 100,000 on each console platform. Truly, console players are keeping this game alive. Without you console players, us PC elitists would be 100% cooked. This game would have been over and dead a long time ago. Shout out to the PlayStation Nation. Shout out to the Xbox gang. Without you, Destiny 2 is literally cooked, dead. And it's nice to finally see these numbers and to know and understand and realize exactly how important each platform is to Bungie's success and to Destiny 2's success by extension. But now we have something more complete. A community-run site called Popularity Report tracks Destiny 2's total player population via the Bungie API across all platforms and activities. It also logs daily online player counts, giving us the clearest view yet of how many people are actually playing. And honestly, I love this. It's excellent to be able to analyze the data of Destiny 2. So that way, if we say things like, oh, Destiny 2 is dying or Destiny 2 is in a bad spot, we can show evidence to support this. We can be like, hey, yes, it is in fact really bad. It's dying. This isn't clickbait. The game is literally doing worse than it was during Curse of Osiris. The cumulative population is lower now than it was in Curse of Osiris. So saying Destiny 2 is dying is not clickbait or an exaggeration or drama. It is a fact. And things are not looking good. In fact, the numbers have now fallen below the lows of Curse of Osiris in 2017, which has widely been considered as the lowest point in Destiny 2's history in terms of player population. Oh, it's not just considered that. I mean, we now have the evidence to support when was the very lowest time, and that obviously is Curse of Osiris. I mean, they said they were 5 weeks away from shutting the doors, and therefore afterwards they put in a lot of effort, launched Warmind, that got us into a much better place, and paved the way so that way they could launch Forsaken, and the rest is history. Destiny 2 has had really kind of a golden age, I would say, between Forsaken until the final shape. Obviously, there's been some lows. There's been some seasons that I haven't been particularly fond of. I'm looking at you, Plunder. There's been some moments where I questioned how far this franchise would go. I'm looking at you, Lightfall. But overall, you can see the general health and you can see a consistent pattern and a trend going across multiple years, which if you're an investor looking to, purchase this company for, let's say, $3.6 billion, when you come to them with this data sheet right here showing that you have an immense audience, millions of people purchase your game upon annual release and stay playing your game month after month, month after month, even when it gets to its lowest point, what happens a year later? Boom! Millions of people buy the next thing for your game. You have a proven track record of success. And you show this bad boy to Sony and say, hey, what do you think about buying our company for, maybe a cool $3.6 billion? They say yes. They say, obviously, you have the formula. Obviously, you know how to do live service. Bungie, to be fair, they're pioneers. They kind of paved the way for live service. They basically wrote the textbook on how to transform a box product game into a live service game, which is why they did this entire GDC conference. Because game devs across the whole world are in high demand for understanding how to transition into live service. And Sony is obviously very much looking to capitalize in that market, which is why they were willing to spend 3.6 billion after seeing this impressive graph. But I guarantee you, if Sony knew what was coming, if they knew what was right around the corner, that Edge of Fate would look like this, that 3.6 billion would be a lot less, let's just say. Let's just say there would be a few less exotic cars in Pete Parsons' garage. Because while this section right here does look incredible, and let's hope and pray that Sony sees this and says, okay, there's still a chance for this franchise. Let's just get it back to this area right here. Like, we haven't been doing Edge of Fate for like 2 years, right? Like, imagine Edge of Fate's lackluster performance extended for 2 years. That would look like, all right, yeah, it's time to just cut this project off. We're not there yet. So the hope is that Sony is going to see this and invest the necessary amount of money to get the game back to where it needs to be. The quote reads, "We were literally 5 weeks away from shuttering Destiny 2. That line comes straight from Justin Truman, who's now Bungie's studio head after Pete Parsons stepped down as CEO, speaking during his GDC talk in 2023, titled From Box Products to Live Service, How Destiny 2 Transformed Bungie. Truman looked back at the early years of Destiny 2 and how close things came to shutting down Destiny 2. And while he did give an insightful look as to how Bungie approaches live service, a lot of people greatly disliked this. I mean, look at the like ratio here. You got 500 likes to 2,000 dislikes. That's pretty bad. And maybe people were trying to misinterpret him, but even still, the optics of this style of development clearly don't sit well with the larger gaming audience. But we're not here to jump into that too much. Referring to the weekly active users in 2018, Truman said this moment right here in February of 2018 was effing terrifying. So this graph shows the trend of our weekly active users, and at the rate that we were shedding players, if this continued for just 5 more weeks, we would run out of players. The entire population would be gone, and we were seriously looking at potentially being 1 month away from having to just close up shop on Destiny 2 altogether. Wow. That dip in active players came right after Curse of Osiris launched in 2017, an expansion that received major backlash at the time. Truman added that the team was literally 5 weeks away from shuttering Destiny 2 as a product. And now here we are, right after the launch of Edge of Fate, and it feels like we're right back there once again. Bungie, for at least a period of time, created a golden age for Destiny 2, but now it feels like we're right back to square one. What saved the game was a major turnaround that began with Forsaken later that year, which rebuilt player trust and started Destiny 2's live service revival. Which is true, Forsaken was like one of the big launches here. Like, Forsaken created a big resurgence, but it should also be said that Warmind walked so that Forsaken could run. If you were playing during this time, which I was, Warmind did offer a bunch of things that really rejuvenated the game. It wasn't by any means the greatest expansion ever, but it definitely laid the foundation so that Forsaken could launch to a massive success. But now, 7 years later, Destiny 2 seems to be circling back to the same state. Destiny 2 player count comparison, Curse of Osiris versus now. After going through and analyzing the daily player data from Popularity Report, we found that during mid-March 2018, Destiny 2's lowest daily online player count hovered between mid to high 400,000, only occasionally dipping just below 400,000. That was considered rock bottom back then, the 5 weeks from shutdown moment Bungie referenced. So here you go. You can see the numbers. March 15, 2018, 386, and it goes on and on and on. Fast forward to now, from late September through October 2025, data shows Destiny 2's total daily online population hovering in the mid 300,000 range, with some days even dropping below 300,000. These are all the lowest all-time platform player count Destiny 2 has ever seen, not just on Steam, but everywhere. And now you can compare the numbers as well. You can see that's rough, especially right here. My God, October 6th, brutal. In short, Destiny 2 now has fewer active players than it did when Bungie thought the game might die. It's important to note that the data referenced here may not perfectly represent Bungie's official numbers, as it is not officially published by the studio itself, But it should also be said that there's other third-party sites that use the API, and it does match up perfectly with this. I'm talking about like Charlemagne bot. Like I'll give you a good example. If you go into Charlemagne's bot right here, you can have it added to your Discord channel. It shows that the overall population is around 316,000 players, and that's all platforms. So that does match up to about where we're at right now. Destiny 2 is bringing in fewer new players than ever. Oh God. Popularity Report also has data for how many new players in Destiny 2 is bringing on in a daily basis, and it shows another worrying sign. Each row in the heat map represents a season from Red War back in 2017 to the current Season 27 Reclamation, and the color scale tracks how many new players joined per day. After launch of Edge of Fate, almost every cell fades to cool blues. Check it out below. Got you. So all of the reds are new players joining the game. So you can see there's some peaks and some spikes, and there's some new player activity here quite a bit. It fades out, and now here we are, where basically everyone that's playing is a veteran player or a relapsed player. What that means for Destiny 2's future. So, is Bungie going to shut down Destiny 2? It's worth remembering that Bungie isn't an independent studio anymore, and while Destiny 2's population right now is at its lowest point ever, it's unlikely that Sony would completely pull the plug anytime soon. Like I said, we've been really experiencing a low point, but when you look at this, like this is a very tiny bit right here. I mean, most people would say this is tiny, but I'd say this is average, maybe even big. But when you compare this to all these years of this very consistent pattern of peaks and valleys, it's not too hard to see that Sony might believe that we could get back to this, considering this has been the history of Destiny for basically since its launch. I mean, the first year had a really low point, but minus the first year, if the graph matched and we never saw like the massive drop off from Curse of Osiris, the first year's graph would look incredible, and Destiny 2 would just have this like impeccable population chart where things peak really high and they do get really low, but there's always people online playing, which is great. And this makes for basically for a safe investment, right? So the Edge of Fate is doing really bad right now, but it is for a short period of time. Hopefully this trend doesn't continue, because obviously if Edge of Fate's population struggles continue for, let's say, a year, 2 years, at about 2 years, I would say that might be the time when Sony decides to pull the plug on this game at the current population that we're sitting at. And when I say pull the plug, I imagine they would probably sell the IP to another gaming studio, and then we'd see another studio get a crack at trying to make Destiny 2 successful, if that's even possible, which I do think is, because I think that you could sell the IP to NetEase, for example, and they have like infinite amounts of money, and they might be interested in launching a Destiny 3. Although it should be said that they did recently launch their Destiny mobile game, and it's not hitting crazy monetization numbers. Like it only made 9 million on launch, and they did purchase it from Bungie for, I believe, 100 million. So even Destiny Rising is kind of burning NetEase right now, so their interest in a Destiny 3 might not be there, considering just how much money it would take to get Destiny 3 going, and the ROI may not make sense on paper. So it is looking really dark for Destiny right now, which is super sad to even say. Like, just saying these words out loud makes me like deeply sad, because I like this game so much. I've played so much. I've spent so much time in this game building a community, and it's been such a wild ride, and I've loved every moment of it. And I don't want the ride to end anytime soon, but I do have to be honest with you all. Destiny remains one of the most successful live service franchises ever made when you look at its performance over the past decade. This is true when you look at the long scale, when you look at the macro, it's done very well over the last few years. It's consistently been in one of the top Steam charts games, and obviously it has tons of microtransactions, and they've got their monetization on lock. So they do have their strategy set in place to make money even during these low points. That said, it's also pretty clear that Destiny 2 in its current state is on the back burner for now, with Bungie's main focus being on Marathon, the upcoming extraction shooter that's meant to be the studio's next big live service flagship. Bungie needs that game to hit, not just for its own future, but for Sony's wider live service strategy, which has been shaky after several delays and cancellations. Sony has been absolutely struggling against Microsoft in this live service market. Microsoft's power and influence is just too good, honestly. And with all the recent tariffs that were recently sent out, it's only making life so much harder for Sony, being an international company, compared to Microsoft, which is an American company. It's at the point now where Microsoft could purchase Sony easily, the entire IP, everything they own. I doubt Sony would ever sell, because they enjoy the space they exist in and the economic growth it brings them. But it should be said that when your competitor can just effortlessly purchase you, they're not much of a competitor, right? If Marathon succeeds, Bungie will have proven it can launch another long-term franchise beyond Destiny. If it doesn't, though, things could get worse. Now, like we said, Sony basically believes that Bungie has the magic, that they can do these live service games better than anyone else, and they said that they would prove it by launching Marathon to mass success. Unfortunately, it has not been that case. Even if you took the art theft scandal out, which I honestly think we should, because I think that a lot of us were blinded by the art theft. We think that, like, oh, it's because of the art theft, no one's ever going to like this game or play this game. It really doesn't have anything to do with that. Before the art theft was even discovered and became this like massive controversy, Marathon was already receiving lukewarm reception at best. People were not jazzed about this game. There was a very small handful of content creators that were even willing to say anything positive about the game. Countless creators were sent to Bungie to play this game, and afterwards, they immediately said they would not endorse this game. After playing behind closed doors, Marathon, they're like, no, we're not, like, this is not it. And we're talking about people in the Destiny space. We're talking about people in the extraction shooter space, and basically just anyone and everyone. Obviously, Bungie, they have enough money and pull. They could get any content creator they want to come to the studio and play Marathon. And only a small handful of content creators were willing to show up and actually say positive things, which is very indicative of a bad game. As much as it pains me to say that too, because I was kind of hoping Marathon would be an absolute banger. I was loving the idea of covering Destiny 2 news, covering Marathon news, but instead it feels like I just have to dunk on Marathon every other week when we get a new update on the game, and basically just wait for its inevitable, dead-on arrival launch. Many longtime content creators have taken breaks or scaled back their coverage of Destiny 2, including Dado, Grenadier Jake, each citing burnout and frustration with the game's direction. Obviously, when there's a low point in terms of population, streamers are also going to make less money, so they're more inclined to, take a vacation, take a break, and if you've made, hundreds of thousands or maybe even millions of dollars playing Destiny 2, you can afford to take a break. So while I will say that this is indicative of a problem, it should also be said that, it's kind of an economics thing for big name streamers and big name content creators. When you can afford to just take off 2 months from your job and it's not going to affect anything because you have plenty enough money, then yeah, you're going to do that when the population is like at a really low point, right? Obviously, it would be much better for the game, for the optics, and for the overall community if the biggest streamers in the world were still excited and energized to keep playing, but that's not where we're at. Destiny 2 isn't dead, not yet, but it's undeniably in trouble. When the player count is lower than the period Bungie once said nearly killed the game, which should raise alarms. For now, all eyes are on the Star Wars themed expansion Renegades and, of course, Marathon. Please, Renegades, please deliver in a big way. Let me know what you think about this down in the comment section below. How do you feel about the new population charts being received? And make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you want to stay up to date on all things Destiny 2. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Later.